going to share a little bit, and we'll see what happens from there, right?
Yes.
Father, we do come to you. I know I'm tired, and this new time change kind of messes up our schedule and the way we think things. But God, you're a good God, and you're still here with us. Thank you for your word that encourages us, strengthens us, guides us, corrects us. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to start by reading from the word from Pastor Jonathan this morning. I said, I think he must have wrote this right for me. I don't know. That's all.
He always does.
Yeah, it says, I have you in the right time and the right place called grace. You are marching to my heartbeat in sync with heaven's rhythm and pace. At times you have felt like you're out there all alone. The truth is you're surrounded by my angels and you have direct access to my divine hotline phone. Like that. Walk in focused awareness that you are working with me. You will bring healing and wisdom that will set the captives free. Freedom from the lies, freedom from the fear, the freedom of my love and truth for all who draw near. These are the days that I have made. Let's charge out together in a Holy Spirit victory raid.
Amen.
I thought that was good.
That's good. Perfect.
Well, last week, I guess Cindy wasn't here, but that's okay. That's okay. I talked about excuses, how we like to make excuses for everything, you know, and especially when God tells us to do something, or we feel prompted by God, just however you want to put it, and it's like we can come up with 1,000 excuses. And remember, I said, now this coming week, you know, listen to God. If you, you know, don't make excuses, just do it. Well, Sunday afternoon, I was sitting, getting really tired in my living room. I had been reading a book, and then I thought, I'm going to watch a movie. I started the movie, but I kept feeling, go up to the lake, you know, up to the North Lake, and I thought, I can read my book right here in my living room, but, and then it finally was like, quit making excuses and practice what you preach. It's like, okay. So I went up there. There's nobody up there. So I had my little chair along, sat out on the dock, and was reading my books. I brought my book that I was reading on my Kindle. That's a mistake, because it's hard to read in sunlight. I'm like, okay, this is really hard to read. And I said, I should have brought the other book along. I was there about a half hour or so reading, and somebody pulled up and had a couple kayaks with them. And they said his first time, not the couple, it was his first time out. And she had been out one other time. And I went, cool. I said, I've always kind of wanted a kayak, but I said, I don't want to do it till I buy one till I've tried one, you know. And he goes, well, if you're still here when I get back, you can take a ride. I went, well, we'll see, you know. It's like, how long are they going to be gone? And they come back like 20 minutes later. I went, that's it? That's all longer? You guys came all the way out here. And she goes, no, we want you to just go take a ride, you know. So I went out for a little bit and came back, and I went, ooh, I'm hooked. And it ended up, he kind of says, yeah, I know what's going to happen as soon as you get home. You know, you're going to be online looking for a kayak, looking at prices. I said, oh, it's already done that. Well, you guys, they went again, you know. And yeah, I ended up buying a kayak, because I said, I'm not going to buy one until I've tried it. And then, plus that they were telling me different things to look for in buying one, you know. This, you know, look for this, do that, you know. Or these are important things to know, and I wouldn't have known that stuff. But I thought I could have missed that all. I mean, for all last summer, even the summer before, another person in town that I knew had a kayak kept trying to say, well, if you ever go out, let me know. I'd like to come out and just try it a little bit. And it just never has worked out. I would have missed that opportunity. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's just a kayak ride. But sometimes it's those little things that we can make excuses in. But if we don't learn to, quote, obey in the little things, when something big comes along, we're going to really mess up, you know. That's like little kids, you know, when they're really little, we train them, hey, you know, don't go out in the street, you know, obey mommy and daddy's voice, and they learn, hey, when you say stop, they stop, because someday they could run out in the street. You can see the car coming, they can't. And, you know, that's why we discipline and train our children, and God does that with us too. We're going to look at a story in the Old Testament, Gideon. So it's Judges chapter 6, I'm going to be reading a different translation than I put up on the computer because I grabbed the wrong Bible and the computer doesn't have the same one I have along here. But that's okay, you can
want
follow.
it up there, though.
Yeah, you can put it up there. We're going to start in verse 11. Well, actually, first, Israel, a little background history. Israel is being attacked by the country of Midian, the Midianites, and mainly because Israel had been disobedient to God. They weren't doing what the Lord told them to do, and so that, yeah, in verse 10, we'll back, well, here, I'll start with verse 7. You don't have it up there, but that's okay. When they cried out to the Lord because of Midian, the Lord sent a prophet to Israelites, and he said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you out of the slavery in Egypt, and I rescued you from the Egyptians and from all those who oppressed you. I drove out your enemies and gave you their land. I told you, I am the Lord your God. You must not worship the gods of the Ammonites in the land you now live, but you have not listened to me." And so this is why they weren't listening, they weren't obeying, and they were getting attacked. And in fact, they were so scared. The Midianites would come in and destroy all their crops or take all their crops. And so they were starving. They didn't have anything. So here's Gideon. Now it says, and starting with verse 11, "And the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath the great tree of Orpha, which belonged to Joash, this clan of," I love these names, "Abiezer." Gideon, the son of Joash, was threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "Mighty hero," or I love it, the New King James, "Oh, you mighty man of valor." I like how it says that. It says, "The Lord is with you." "Sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say God brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you." "But Lord," Gideon replied, "how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole of the tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." And the Lord said, "I will be with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as if you were fighting just against one man." So let's go back to verse 11. It says, "The angel of the Lord," and a lot, especially in the Old Testament, whenever it talks about the angel of the Lord, it's believed that was actually Jesus manifesting in the Old Testament. Jesus had not yet come to earth, but he appears in like a bodily form that they could see, like an angel. The angel of the Lord. So he appears to Joash. Now it says, I love it, the angel calls him, "Oh, you mighty man of valor." Wait a minute. He is threshing wheat in the bottom of a wine press. It's down, and the wine presses were deep in the ground. He's hiding. He doesn't look like a mighty man of valor, does he? And also, let me see. And a mighty, the might, it means physical strength and power, or the ability to accomplish. And valor is boldness or determination in facing great danger, especially in battle. Heroic courage and bravery. He doesn't look very brave. He's hiding in a wine press. Down so nobody, but they had some prop at least. And I love it. God, the angel calls him, the angel of the Lord, he calls him a mighty man of valor. There's something that God saw in Gideon that Gideon didn't even see in himself. And let's put up the Romans 4:17 scripture, and I'll just read it off though. "As it is written, I have made you a father of many nations. He's our father in the sight of God, in whom he believed, the God who gives life to the dead and calls things that are not as though they were." God calls things that are not as though they were. Because you know what? Remember, there's no time with God. He sees us all the way to the end. What we're called to be, who we're called to be. And he sees the potential in us, even when we don't see the potential in ourselves. And then, in verse 13, Gideon says, "If the Lord is with us," wait a minute. This is the very first thing. First, the angel had said, the Lord is with you. And then he goes, well, if he's with us. Okay, first of all, he's talking to an angel. Of course, he doesn't even realize this. Because, how do I know that he doesn't know who he's talking to? In verse 13, it says, oh my Lord. How does it say it in King James? Yeah. Oh my Lord. See, it's a little L. This is the word Adon in Hebrew. It just means like reading a man. Sir. Mr. He doesn't know who he's talking to. He doesn't realize this is actually a heavenly visitation. And he says, well, if that's so, if God's with us, then why has all this happened? And where are all the miracles? And what? Does this sound familiar? I hear people all the time, well, if God's really in this, then what? Where's things happening? Why hasn't God showed up? What? He brought us out of Egypt, then he's abandoned us and all this stuff. And I love it that the angel does not reply. In verse 13, it's just like kind of ignores him. And I know he kind of ignores him because on the beginning of verse 14 it says, then the Lord turned to him. Had he turned away? Just kind of like Gideon starts, well, if God's with us, it's like, I ain't going to listen to you. Do you ever feel like sometimes God's kind of turned his back on you and it's like, are you even listening? It's probably because we're complaining and we're not listening to what he just told us. He says, I'm with you. You're a mighty man of valor. And well, if that's so. And God just kind of turns away. Well, once you start believing what I said, I'm not turned. He says, then he turned back to him. In verse 14. 14. He says, go with the strength that you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I'm sending you. The strength that you have. And I kind of read that, kind of laughed. I said, yeah, don't look like Gideon's got much strength. He's hiding. He is so scared, he's hiding. But what was some of the strength that he had? He is the might, or I'm going to call it the might, strength, same thing. You know, if you're a mighty, that's strength. He had the might of the humble. He cared enough about his people that he was trying to thresh some wheat so that they could eat, and he was doing it in hiding. Even though he was afraid, he was still doing it. That he was humble. He has the might of caring. He cared about the low place that they were in. They were starving. He cared about the people. He had the might of knowledge because he knew God did great things in the past. He was knowledgeable. He had heard the stories. He says, God's done this before. Do it again. Do it again. He had the might of the spiritual hungry because he wanted to see God do great works again. He had the might of the teachable because he listened to what the angel of the Lord said. And he had the might of the weak. And God's strength is perfected in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12:9. Did I put that one in the computer? Yeah, why don't you just go ahead and put that up. But he said to me, my grace, what's grace again? God's divine influence is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. In other words, when we are weak, he is strong. And what's the saying? God always has you do things that you can't do. And that's part of the plan. Because then his greatness can show through. I love the saying by Teddy Roosevelt, do what you have with what you got where you're at. And this is basically what the angel's telling Gideon. Just go in the strength that you do have. Okay, you're weak, but you do have some things. And he saw him as a mighty man of valor. Because I'm sending you. And then, here comes the excuses. But suddenly, Gideon realizes something. In verse 15, it says, my Lord. Uh-oh, capital L. This is Adonai. He's gone from Adon, just to think he's talking to a man, to suddenly he realizes, my Lord, Adonai, which Adonai always refers to the name, to Yahweh, to God. He knows now, this is God speaking to me. See, he's had a revelation. This isn't just a man coming up and telling me something. This is God speaking to me. He had a revelation. A revelation is a surprising and previously unknown fact. One that is made known in a dramatic way by making known of something that was previously secret or unknown. A divine or a supernatural disclosure to humans, something that relating to human existence. It's when there's no way we could have known this, but now we know it. And I always say we know it down in our knower. We know that we know that we know. He had a revelation that this is God. But then he starts making excuses, even though he knew it was God. Verse 15 says, "But Lord," Gideon replied, "how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family." I'm the youngest. We're the least. I mean, our family is nothing. Are these good excuses? Yeah. I remember back when Tyson was in high school and he was rodeoing, we'd pull into rodeo grounds in our old literally rusty, falling apart trailer. One time our wheel fell off on the way to the rodeo. I mean, it was really bad. Okay, this tells you how bad our trailer was. And then I usually was coming behind with the van and our pop-up camper. Oh, we were slick. Pulling up next to people in these big rigs, and the fancy living quarter horse trailers. And actually the kids are riding their dad's or their mom's horse, and their parents are, pro rodeo people or down there SDRA. And I'd always tell Tyson, we don't have a name. We don't have a name in rodeo. We weren't a Hermanson or some of these other ones that have a big name in rodeo. I said, it don't matter. I said, and we don't have the fancy trailer, and we have a pickup that's barely running, but you can still do it. That doesn't really matter. And Gideon, he's not quite there yet. He's still at the excuse level that, how can I rescue it? My clan's the weakest. My whole tribe with the Manasseh. And then I'm the least in my entire family. I'm the youngest. I can't do anything. I only had an 8th grade education or whatever. Come up with something. And he's got... Again, it's like, Lord, just like, would you be quiet? Then the Lord, Adonai, said to him, "I am with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as you were fighting against one man." In fact, the name Gideon, it means one who cuts down, a hewer of trees. And that's what God had called him to do, is cut down the Midians. He was the one that God was sending in. So his whole life, every time they said, "Gideon, come here," they're saying, you're going to be one that cuts down. You're going to hew it down. You're going to knock it down. And I don't think he believed his name because he thought he was still the youngest. Gideon was correct. He could not save Israel. But a great God can use a small and the weak Gideon to rescue him. Gideon did not need more self-confidence. He needed more God confidence. He needed more of awareness that God was with him. That is enough. And the Lord said to him, "I am with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as if you were fighting against one man." And if you go on and read the next few verses, it talks about Gideon. He goes and he builds an altar. He says, "Wait a minute, don't leave till I come back." And he goes gets a goat or something, and they did sacrifices in the Old Testament, and he puts it on there. And actually, he says, "Well, show me his sign." And the angel takes his staff that he had with him, and he touches it, and flames start. Now, I don't think there was igniter at the end of his staff. And I love it in verse 24. I'm sorry, I don't have it in the computer there. It says, "And Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and named it Yahweh Shalom, which means the Lord is peace. The altar remains in Ophrah to this day, the land of the clan of Goan." But he built an altar that says there's peace. There wasn't yet peace in their land, but there was peace in his heart. In order for there to be peace in your circumstances, you have to have peace first in your heart. And he built an altar. And that's when, building an altar is worshiping. He worshiped the Lord and said, "You're my peace. You're it. This is it." You're the one. We don't want to make excuses like Gideon, but we do it all the time. So I encourage you, don't make excuses, because I bet this week at some point God's going to challenge you. Don't make excuses, just do it. Maybe not you, but I will be challenged, I know. Every time I preach something, I get challenged on it more than anybody else. They live what you preach. And it isn't any easier for me to do than for you. I have to walk this just the same as you. And sometimes it ain't easy. Gideon didn't feel qualified, but God doesn't anoint the qualified. He qualifies the anointed. He says,
That's good.
yeah, I'll say that again. God doesn't anoint the qualified. He qualifies the anointed. He had a revelation that it was God, and he went in the strength that he had. It wasn't much to begin with. In fact, actually, the very first thing the Lord tells him to do, he did it at night. He took a couple friends with him, and he did it at night because he was so scared. And then their villager or town found out who had done this, and they found out that it was Gideon. They said, bring him out here, we're going to stone him, we're going to kill him. And his dad goes, no, you're not. But that's a whole other story. God sees us when we don't see ourselves, for who we really are, for who we are with Christ in us. We're victorious, even when we don't feel very victorious, because the victor lives within us. And okay, I'm just preaching to me
No,
today,
that's good.
and I believe me, I need this. I need this immensely. So Father, we just thank you for your word. Your word is so much truth and has so much to speak into our lives that we can learn from even stories like Gideon, who's hiding in a wine press down in the bottom, threshing wheat, and that don't work very good either because there's no wind down there. But you're going to take even the things that look foolish, and you can use that. We can go in the strength that we do have. Just, if it's all it is just saying, okay, I'll do it. I'll do whatever the little thing is. That's enough, because you're with us. You're with us here, God, at Alive Christian Fellowship. You are here with us. In Jesus' name.